Nowadays, there's little doubt on the significance of the STAR method in pretty much any job interview when it comes to answering non-technical questions. Now, what's not as well known is where does this method come from, who invented this, and why did it become so popular? So, as you might expect, it's not candidates who invented the STAR method, but rather the hiring part, the HR departments of various companies, because it's pretty much a framework, and HR departments love frameworks because it provides them with a structured manner with which they can index information, so they can eventually rank candidates to a certain extent, both in the telephone screen and also for the on-site process. But it's not always been such a thing to pretty much rank candidates like this, and this has become such a big trend once structured hiring became such an important one. And structured hiring simply means that you would have multiple steps, as many steps as possible ideally, in a hiring process, because what companies observed here is the more people they involved in the hiring process, the better the hiring, the better the outcomes. And this actually plays in both your employers and in your favor, to the extent that you have time to invest in this process, of course. But with this significant investment of multiple people in the process, there's also the cost concerns, cost both in terms of their people's time and various other costs in terms of clarity and all that stuff. But basically, the more people you include in the hiring process, the more information you have to analyze, and it's obviously becomes more costly. And this was actually too costly before digitization became a thing. So that's why hiring processes were not too structured by definition. But since the digitization has come into place, they can now afford to index all that feedback from candidates and from interviewers more easily in a centralized system that would be available pretty much anytime to all members of the hiring process, in some cases. And needless to say that it has become cheaper to do higher quality when it comes to hiring. So it's become easier for companies to invest more resources into this. Now, as with any such advantages of structured hiring process, there are also some disadvantages, of course, and as with any over-standardization process, there's always the risk for some people not being able to represent themselves very well, because after all, your goal as a candidate is to differentiate yourself from others in the hiring process, whereas if you're working in a template, there's only so much room to differentiate yourself. So you're basically constrained by definition, and then you start from there. Now, what does it mean? I mean, is this a mandatory requirement to use a STAR method in a job interview? And I would very much argue that it is not. And I'm saying this both by working from an employer's perspective, but more importantly by hearing feedback from other candidates, especially after passing phone screening rounds, that, hey, the most critical feedback I heard is that I must get my stories into a STAR format, but they did pass the phone interview. So my advice to you would be to be very careful analyzing to what extent you would feel comfortable templating your answers when compared to how powerful they are. In other words, if you feel like the idea that you want to transmit is only 50% as powerful if you template it, I would say don't template it, right? Or I would advise you to ideally work on further to polish the way you communicate that idea so that it sounds at least 95% as good when you template it, because it is possible after all. It is possible to work with that framework. The important element is to understand that this STAR method, and by the way, there are many variations of this STAR, PAR, what's called, it's a policy. Like I remember at Amazon, there used to be a famous policy that we've outlawed PowerPoint presentations, right? That's a policy. This doesn't mean that no one uses PowerPoint presentation in Amazon interviews. In fact, they use it even for candidate presentations. They have templates in PowerPoint formats for this, but that's a policy. So you should understand it as politics, right? So when it comes to your performance, you should do what's best for you in your case to optimize your chances to get over this. Maybe you would want to overemphasize on the task that it was at hand. Maybe you'd want to overemphasize on the results. Maybe you don't want to overemphasize on something else. But the point is, a good answer is not necessarily a star answer, right? Now, of course, when if you're applying for a very junior role, the importance of filling in that star template increases, because the more junior you are, your expectations is to a certain extent be able to execute under given constraints. But the more senior the role that is for you, the more important it is that you preserve your own personality traits in order to put an accent on your strengths and better play on your strengths. Because what I noticed is the more you template these answers, the less probable would be that you will have time to focus on your strengths, whereas to fit in to a certain template. So I guess the overall conclusion here of this whole video should be that you should be aware of this balancing act between playing on your strengths, doing your best to answer the question that you're getting asked, and fitting it into a template that a company imposes primarily because it's something that works for them in the first place. So there you go. I hope at least some of this information helped you to better tune up your answers, because that's the end goal here. And thank you very much for watching.